Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, I'm unearthing one of those long-lost episodes from Matt Report Season 6, way back in the summer of 2017. But today's guest is Marie Haynes, and what she did is she came on the show. She's all about SEO. That's what her practice is. She has a paid newsletter that brings you insights that you don't normally find either easily or quickly about the Google algorithm. Some of the stuff that she presents today might be a little dated back to what was going on back in the summer of 2017, but her practice of sort of uncovering and becoming much more like a detective of how the Googles and their algorithms come together. These are things that I recorded. There are some technical glitches, that's why I never really fully released them. You'll hear some of my system sounds in the background of her presentation, namely my Slack channels going off, which was the actual reason why I never released this one, because I ended up just recording my system sound and not my microphone, and sort of drove me a little crazy. But here we are. It's still stellar content. I can't thank her enough for doing the show. Go say thanks. And she actually has a paid newsletter that you can join. So if you want these deeper insights into the Google algorithm, she does all the hard work, all the research and the practice that goes into it. She can give it to you all through her newsletter. It's definitely top-notch material. I recommend checking that out if you're, into ranking on Google, and who isn't these days. Certainly a good chunk of us get our traffic from Google search, organic search today.
We could probably talk the rest of the day on trying to understand Google algorithm changes, and I don't put myself forward as someone who completely understands Google. But what we're going to talk about is the major algorithms that could potentially cause ranking problems with the site. If you want to just go to the next slide, it was a little bit of an introduction, although I think we've already talked about what I do. I like this picture because it's I'm Canadian, and I built an ice rink this year in our backyard. So this was me in front of, I know, right? This is me in front of my ice rink. It was fantastic. But let's talk first of all about Google's Penguin algorithm. And Penguin was something that came out. This is, again, what launched me into my career. Penguin was something that came out in April of 2012. And it was a way that Google was going to combat web spam. And web spam basically means people who are just trying to trick Google into thinking that your site is the best one to rank. And we know that Penguin is mostly about the quality of the links that point to your site. However, a lot of people overlook the fact that there are other factors to Penguin. And so Google's initial blog post about Penguin talked a lot about things like keyword stuffing. And hiding keywords, the old tactic of white keywords on a white background, things like that. If you do tricky things to a big enough degree, then it can potentially cause Penguin to affect you. Now, when Penguin first came out, it was devastating. And what it went after was mostly links that people made for only SEO reasons. So if you look at some of the older SEO advice that's out there, people would say, well, every link that you can get will help you. And there were thousands and thousands of directories that no human being would ever read, but you could put a link on that directory. And if you did enough of those, that would actually help your ranking. When Penguin came along, it could recognize sites that had used these really low quality link building tactics, and it would actually cause a demotion on the site. And so what would happen was it would almost be like there was an anchor that was pulling your site down and making it much harder to rank where you normally should rank. And it would affect the entire site that you would just have trouble ranking. And the crazy thing about Penguin in the past was that it would only run occasionally. And so you could clean up your Penguin issues by getting rid of links or by using a tool that Google gave us called the disavow tool. And the disavow tool would basically say, all right, Google, we don't want you to look at these links when you're making Penguin calculations in our site. And so let's say you cleaned up all your links, you'd have to wait until Google reran the Penguin algorithm to see if you were still suppressed by the algorithm. That all changed, though, in September of 2016. And Google made it so that Penguin no longer penalizes sites, but what it does is if it finds unnatural link building, it just ignores those links. So the benefit of that is that because I was seeing all of these small businesses that would hire very low quality SEOs and get in Penguin trouble. And then they were basically stuck for some of them even for years until Google fixed this. And now what it means is, yeah, you can go ahead and build all these spammy links, but they're not going to help you at all. And so Google's made it so that the only links that really count in most cases are links that people actually use, or links that you would expect to see even if SEO didn't matter. And again, I mean, I've probably oversimplified Penguin, but the point is that it doesn't make sense anymore to just go out and get as many links as you can. The quality of your backlinks is super important. And then let's move on to Panda. So Panda first came out in early 2011. It was before Penguin. And when Panda first came out, everybody called it the farmer update initially because we didn't have a name for it. And people realized that what it was going after, initially the sites that were hit were sites that had major duplicate content issues, in the sense that they were taking content from other websites and republishing it as their own. And a lot of these sites dropped like crazy. The other thing that Panda affected was thin content. And thin content is content that really doesn't help people because there's no substance to it. So for example, if you had thousands and thousands of pages on your site where everything was the same except you've swapped out the city keyword, that could be seen as thin content. And there are many other examples as well. And in the early days of Panda, I had seen a number of sites that we were able to recover from Panda by simply cutting out thin content and making sure that we weren't scraping content from other websites, and we could see some pretty cool recoveries. But now Panda, we don't know exactly. I mean, we never knew exactly how it works, but it's something that's built right into the algorithm, and it's created to determine what is unique, original, and valuable content. So Google put out a blog post with a series of, I think it was 23 questions from Amit Singhal. And these questions were all ones that you could ask yourself in order to say, is my site actually providing valuable content? So if a site was affected by Panda, and this is true today, it again acts as almost like an anchor that can pull the site down. And it can make it so that you don't rank at your full potential until you fix these quality issues. And this kind of bleeds into the next algorithm update, which we call Fred. Now, Fred is a silly name. What happened was there was a big algorithm update where a lot of sites were affected on March 7th of this year. And Barry Schwartz from Search Engine Roundtable asked Gary Ish from Google whether there was an update, and Google's response is always, well, we make 2 to 3 updates a day. And so Gary said, you might as well call this Fred, and every other update from this point on is Fred, and so we call it Fred. Now, Fred, there's not a lot known about it, and really what we called Fred on March 7th, it was confirmed by Google afterwards that there were several quality updates around the same time that we all kind of lumped into Fred. But here's what I've seen from reviewing a great number of sites that have been affected by Fred. Google puts out a guideline, a very large publication called Quality Raters Guidelines, and you can get it online. It's about 160 pages. And this is a list of things that they give to a whole bunch of human beings. And they say, okay, now here's a whole bunch of sites. We want you to look at these sites and tell us, according to these guidelines, which ones are the high quality ones. And so the human beings they have, a whole interface where they have to answer all these questions about certain websites. And then Google's engineers try to create algorithms that mimic what the human beings would find. And so this is Google's attempt to find even more what is a high quality website. And there are a number of things that are mentioned in the quality guidelines. If you have the time to read it, it's certainly worthwhile because there are loads of nuggets in there about what Google considers to be quality. But the ones that I've listed here in my opinion, seem to be the things that Google are trying to figure out. So the first one I've written down EAT, that stands for experience, authority, and trust. And what I was seeing is that some sites were dropping, in my opinion, because the authors on these sites actually didn't have the experience, authority, or trust to write these articles. So for example, if you had a medical site that had, some decent information, but it wasn't written by a physician or somebody with medical experience, then you could be affected negatively by this algorithm. I saw a number of legal sites that dropped, and they were being beaten by sites that had articles that were actually written by attorneys. And it makes sense, because if you think, if I was looking for example, financial advice, I'd rather read an article that was written by somebody who's been in the financial world for years and has tons of experience than somebody who's a good journalist. So this is one of the things Google, in my opinion, was starting to do with Fred. The guidelines also talk about the reputation of a website. So if your website just has a really bad reputation online, that can negatively affect your rankings. Now, Google knows that every website has people who are going to complain about them. Every business has complainers. The odd complainer is not going to cause you to have problems. But if the overall sentiment about your website online is that people don't like it, then that could affect your rankings as well. And one of the biggest issues with the quality raters guidelines is user frustration issues. One of the sites that I analyzed that dropped had these ads that we all hate. It was, they had big popover ads, and they had ads that you thought were going to download a product, but when you clicked on it, it went to some other site to download their product, and things that are really annoying to users. Google's getting better and better at finding those, and then making sure that those sites are not going to be appearing high up in the search results. So that's a very brief overview of those three algorithms. And there are many other algorithms that we know of that Google uses. But I thought I would mention just briefly how you could determine whether your site was affected by one of these algorithms. So what I like to do is look in Google Analytics, if you've got that set up. And this slide just talks about the process that you go through to find just your Google organic traffic. Because I've seen sites where, for example, if you have a lot of social traffic from, say, Facebook shares, or if you run PPC campaigns, then that's going to interfere with your ability to see whether a Google algorithm has affected you. So you definitely want to look at just Google organic traffic. And you want to see if you have a significant drop that starts on one of the dates where we know that there was an algorithm update. So the next slide talks about some of the ways you can find out if there was a Google algorithm update. I have a list that I've been maintaining since 2011 of all of the known Panda and Penguin updates and all of the suspected ones. There were several times where Google didn't announce that they updated Panda, but those of us who work on Panda hit sites, all of us would say, hey, something Panda related happened on this day. So that's on this list. And then I've also written all of the unannounced significant updates. Now, Google will tell you that there are 2 to 3 algorithm updates a day that they make. So obviously not all of those are on there. But even just recently, almost every month or so, there seems to be one change that's really big. And then a bunch of people in the industry will get together and say, well, it seems to me like it affected this type of site. And that can sort of help us know what needs to be fixed in order to fix that. And then the other way to stay up to date, we've mentioned my newsletter as well. I'll send out an immediate newsletter if there's a major algorithm change that everybody needs to know about. And then otherwise, every 2 weeks or so, I'll send out a newsletter that says, look, here's the changes that we've seen on Google in the last 2 weeks, and here's how you should pay attention to that. So that's really a very brief and probably too quick overview of of these algorithms. And again, each of these topics we could probably go several hours talking about, but generally that's the overview.
So that's our presentation. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a whole bunch of stuff in Marie's presentation. If you do, if you enjoyed it and you want to get more of this stuff, be sure to check out her website. I'll link it up in the description, link it up in this video. She has a paid newsletter where all of this stuff can come right into your inbox. You don't have to go digging around. She'll do the worry work of trying to figure out what's going on with the Google algorithm for SEO purposes, link building purposes, and if that's what you need to be on her email list. So go ahead and check that out and give her a thanks for joining the show. What do you think about the channel so far? You enjoying the videos and the sort of different types of content that I've been putting out, slightly different than my podcast? If you're a podcast listener, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what kind of content that you want to see. You know, we've got some of this older archive stuff that I'm releasing. I've got this stuff I'm doing with internet marketers. I'm reverse engineering sort of their work and bringing it to you to show you how I sort of take away from their knowledge and use it on my own without buying stuff from them. No offense to any of them. And I have some original content that I put out, some thoughts and ideas around marketing, podcasting, and of course YouTube. Thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you didn't. Don't forget to comment below. We'll see you in the next episode.